Jordan, that's a nice hat.
Thank you.
You got there.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know the hat, what it symbolizes?
What?
Colorado. This is the Colorado state emblem.
I've got the U.S. Thingy here. Why won't you, show me where Colorado is?
Sure. So Colorado is basically right here. Basically smack dab in the middle, and is a giant square right here. It's next to Utah, then there's Arizona, New Mexico, and obviously we have Texas right here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for that geography lesson.
Of course. Here you go.
So, kicking off here, we talked about what doesn't work in our recent episodes about Israeli Hebrews among founders, misunderstanding of the American market, about attempts to buy your way into the U.S. market. What do we do as go-to-market consultants? Things that founders, CEOs, and founding members should do when entering the U.S. market. And now there's additional layer, which is a little different that, we want to talk about. And I feel like, we talked about Friends, Seinfeld, all of that, nice spots in Manhattan. I feel like Israelis are centered around Manhattan. There's a lot of attention to Manhattan, to New York.
I would even argue even the coasts.
The San Francisco, LA, but I think it stopped there. As opposed to, let's say, secondary market, like, Denver, Colorado. But those places are, getting traction no one hear about.
Of course.
Which is interesting, and no one is looking there. Why?
Well, I think that's a great question, to be honest. And my thoughts are that there are really three things that come up in conversation, either from people being surprised or from their own, experiences that I kind of feel are the reasons why people don't choose. First and foremost, I think is logistics. Really, just truthfully, you have direct flights to San Francisco from Israel, direct flights to New York, Miami. You don't have a direct flight to Denver. You just don't. You don't have a direct flight to Indianapolis. You don't have a direct flight to St. Louis. You don't have a direct flight to these places. You just don't. And so people are not going to, go actually to these places if it's an extra flight. I think that's a big reason. And I really do put it out there. I think the second reason is really unfamiliarity with America. I think a lot of sitcoms, TV shows, whatever, center around the big cities in America, rightfully so, because that's kind of what's fun and happening and whatever. And it's also like, the sexy. But that doesn't teach you about really, the other, let's call it 49 states, right? Or the other, 99% of Americans. It tells you about a specific area. And I think there's really just a lack of familiarity. When having lived in Israel now for almost 10 years, when I tell people I'm from Colorado, the most common response I get from Israelis is, where's that?
Have you seen Dumb and Dumber?
Exactly. Actually, great show. Or movie. Exactly. You know what I mean?
Aspen?
Exactly. Come on.
Samsonite?
Come on. Or you know what I get? The classic Israeli answer is like, oh, right, that's the place with the weed.
It's good. At least they've heard about it, right?
It's good brand positioning, you know what I mean? But they just don't know. And so I think that's a familiarity issue. It's like beyond, and that is, I would say one, logistics, because that probably affects the familiarity, but two is familiarity. And then the third reason I would really say that people don't explore these markets, these markets, these opportunities, is often because they really just don't have a way in. And this is not logistics. This is beyond logistics, because you don't have a way into that ecosystem. You don't have your cousin who lives in New York.
Or that group of Israelis that,
Right. Or who's willing to engage with you or whatever. You just don't have that person on the ground there. And likelihood is in LA, San Francisco, New York, Miami. You just have more of a chance of it.
Yeah. And when I lived in Boston, I was working in a startup in Somerville.
Okay.
Not super familiar. And I was doing a lot of activities with, membership groups, Chamber of Commerce associations. And I've always mentioned that as a way in here in Israel. But I feel like people it didn't resonate with the Israeli audience.
Sure.
And I just don't understand why. I mean, Chamber of Commerce was so great. It was super helpful to penetrate into a specific market.
Sure.
And why? Like, maybe you can tell me why a chamber of commerce or member association is a good thing, and what people here in Israel just don't understand. Why it doesn't resonate to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. First of all, in the U.S., I think we, a lot more than Israel, rely on kind of industry associations and membership associations, professional associations, to actually drive business and drive network connections. I think it's done even more in America than probably most places because of histories of unions and various protections that were done and stuff like that, right? And also just the opportunity of being able to say, hey, we're going to connect all these players in an industry, especially in a state or in a city in that state. Because America is just so large. You have to be able to have those kind of associations. Otherwise, you really don't have connection in ecosystems, right? America is not America. It's 50 states. There are 50 states in the Union.
Like 150 Israels.
I don't even think Israel has 50 major cities. You know what I mean? Like, I think we have 5, So add a 0, and that's how many states you have in the U.S. And each one has, within those, probably 5 major cities. You know what I mean? Unless it's like Wyoming. So no offense. Yeah, no offense. But exactly. But that's the truth. And so I think they're very important. They can help you get to private sector leaders and public sector leaders. They're often known by both the public sector leaders and the private sector leaders. So
they trust them.
And they trust them. And those guys are also actively involved as members. You're those guys who are in these various associations, the builders associations, the tech associations, whatever it might be, they're involved. And that means they're listening to the association, and the association is listening to their members. And that's very important.
Yeah.
And, I think the greatest thing as to why, a lot of people here don't get that is just because the association system here is a lot different.
Café Shachor.
Everything's a lot more person-to-person, easy connections. The associations that do exist, they're for, much larger kind of ideas, much bigger institutions, whereas in the U.S., it's not always like that. Even the small guys and the big guys are trying to get into the same door. And I think, you can see it a lot that it's just something that Israelis aren't familiar with. And I can give you actually an example of kind of this lack of familiarity and this lack of kind of connection.
Would love to hear it.
So not too long ago, I was at a party and I was talking to a guy who I hadn't seen in a while, and he asked me, so kind of, what's new? And I told him that I'd been running the Colorado-Israel Chamber of Commerce for about 2.5 years now, what we've been doing. And he said, okay, but I don't understand. Why do I need you? And I said, that's why you need me right there, because you don't understand why you need me. And you think that you would be able to, in a sense, access, let's say, this market, Colorado, without me. He says, no, but I don't get it. Why do I need you? What are you going to do for me? And I explained to him, we're here. We are ourselves a membership organization. We have members. They listen to us. We are members in other organizations where we are members and can put our ideas forward so we can actually connect you to other people in the system. We know who's where and who actually has the decision-making capabilities. We've been building that network. And in a sense, yes, we are a connecting organization, but we save time making the right connections for you, putting you in front of the right opportunities in the state, not putting you in front of people
straight up.
Yeah. And that's what we do.
And, we talked earlier about the fact that, Colorado is secondary, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So there's no direct flight.
Yeah.
And essentially what you did as an American, you built a direct link into Colorado.
Yes.
So that, person you mentioned in the conversation wouldn't even think about going to Colorado before Manhattan.
Of course.
Right? So I love the story about, what do you do for me? The fact that I'm giving you Colorado, just like that, is saving you research of like, you know what? We've been trying to penetrate the U.S. market through Manhattan. It's not working us for a year. How about we try the secondary market? And you essentially save them a year by let's go straight to Colorado and see how everything works.
100%. And that's, I think, what we are able to create. I think I liked how you even described it just now. We have created that direct link, that direct flight for people to actually understand it and to be able to get in there and figure it out. Now, of course, can an Israeli get into Colorado without my help? Of course. Of course. It's happened before. It's not like there weren't Israeli companies that moved there. Hey, I'll give an example. Milio moved to Denver. They had a major headquarters out of Denver before I existed as a chamber. So there are Israelis who figured it out. But what's funny is that Milio went to New York too before they went to Denver. So it's like at the end of the day, the similar movements are still there. Now Milio is also an outlier there. He became a unicorn in a sense. That's truly an outlier. So it's an example, but we've been able to build that. And I think when it comes to chambers of commerce, just Israelis don't have that same association with membership and paid membership that the US does. We do have that. You're even built into that from a very young age based on other things, let's say in high school that you even join as clubs that you have to pay just a annual fee to.
And what happens if I don't want to pay and I start calling people?
They don't listen. Or they're going to tell you that you're scamming. And, we even had that, with one of our clients who, I call them a client because we do operate also as a chamber, but we also act as a service business for certain people. And we were working with them, and they basically pitched a major organization in the state that we later got an email from the national headquarters of this association telling us, kind of like, no more. Like, you can't do that again.
Mm-hmm. So again, it goes back to that circle of trust even.
Yep.
There's very specific channel. That's how it works. If you want to play with us, that's fine. That's how it works.
Right.
Again, another cultural differences.
Right.
Strong one.
And also not messing up those opportunities too.
For example, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we had a company come in that we did an impact trip for. It was actually very successful, but there was one hiccup that happened. It was for it was actually for working with the Colorado Oil and Gas Association. Major association. That's a major body. There's a lot of big players there. They wanted to do a webinar in front of their entire membership. They never sent a link in the webinar. No one showed up. It was a mess. It looked totally unprofessional. And that's one opportunity that you've now burnt. It's not going to come back to you. You've burnt that, and guess what? You now burnt that with all few hundred companies that are associated with them. So now, instead of being able to reach 300 guys, let's say, who would have been the right decision makers for you to make your pitch, you're going to reach 0, and you're going to now have to spend all that time reaching those 300 individually. Can you do it? For sure. You can do it. It's going to take you a lot of time. You might not get anywhere, but you can do it.
So if I'm taking a step back and you built this with Colorado.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's in Colorado that you don't have in New York or in San Francisco, and what real business do you see there?
Oh yeah. So first, I mean, there's a ton. Okay, and I think it's really it's kind of like it hits above its weight in terms of like its size and what's actually going on there. Kind of like Israel in that sense. There's 5 million people in the state, and it is really a center for a lot going on. So other than the fact that Denver is a major tech hub and has a lot of VC money running through there.
It's a huge city.
Yeah, it's 1 million people. And Boulder, which is only about an hour away, which a lot of people also know, is like a tech hub. There's 11 unicorns out of Boulder right now, which a lot of people don't know. Google's there, Amazon's there. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. But really, what are some big fields in Colorado? First and foremost, aerospace and space. Colorado has the second biggest industry in the U.S. when it comes to aerospace and space. Space Force for a while was located there. Lockheed Martin is there. Northrop Grumman. There's some major companies there, both large and small, and they're really innovative in that space. It's a major part of the state's kind of economic incentives and is a big, big thing. And Israelis also do understand that. There's actually a major symposium every year in Colorado called the Colorado Space Symposium. But like all things, it's harder to get there if you don't know what you're doing there. It is expensive, and you have to know what you want out of that. So it goes back to all our point of really understanding the conferences you need to be at. But beyond aerospace, the state is also very big in energy, renewable energies, trying to figure out what's going on there. There's the National Energy Lab of the Rockies, formerly known as NREL, which is located there. And as you could imagine, there's a lot of technologies and developments going on in clean tech, clean energies, and trying to find how to work with that. Agriculture and water. Colorado is going through a major drought. It's an arid climate.
Israel is big on water.
Listen, these two, and they have the same issue. Arid climate. They have very complex water resources to manage with very complex neighbors, and they need to figure out how to do it. Colorado has the Colorado River. It goes through the Grand Canyon. It is literally starting in Colorado, right? This is a water source that serves tens of millions of Americans.
Maybe we should get sponsorship from the state of Colorado for this episode.
Yeah, or Netafim,
Netafim, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
So I mean, who's the, I wanted to take a step back and really hear about, what's that corridor that you've built actually is. And, if we're talking Dugri.
Yeah.
who's the perfect Israeli company to go there?
Yeah, sure. So the corridor that we've built is basically a variety of partners, networks, and members that we've either become a part of, have joined our specific chamber, or we are, in touch with as, kind of community and state level leadership to actually move things forward. So what does like an engagement look like with us? Well, you come, we understand what your company is, what your technology is. If you're actually at a state that's ready to come to the US, and if you have the abilities and the capacity and the resources to do that, because a lot of people don't.
Which is helpful at them, because then the company in Israel can can work on specific things as they go into the US. So that's a lot of huge value.
Of course. Listen, I think our filtering process is actually a major help for some people, because, you have to understand, coming to Colorado might sound nice, coming to the US might sound nice, but you have to actually be able to do it. If you don't have the capacity to do it, and I put you in a room with a lot of people who are going to want your solution and you can't deliver,
yeah, it's not
you've burnt yourself. You've burnt me. I'm never working with you again, and they're never going to work with you again. And that's like a one and done, and it's very common that can happen. So we test that out. Once we understand that, then we kind of map who are relevant people for us to connect you with within our network and within our kind of general understanding. And then we go ahead and make those connections. And based on varying degrees of either membership or how we're working with you, we'll go deeper or less deep with you depending on how that works. But our key members and clients and companies that want to work with us are generally people and companies that understand these principles, that they must have resources and the capacity to do so. They're generally funded at that level too. So we're talking like round A, round B, or a very heavy seed round. And they're already looking into US expansion in kind of an intelligent, exciting way. They're not just kind of, coming at me for operational tactics. They're coming at me because they really understand that, there's a market opportunity here. There's institutes here that I want to partner with. There are businesses on the ground that I want to meet with and potentially do pilots or sales with. And that's what they're able to do. And that's like my kind of greatest company that I want to work with.
Right. So and I wanted to ask you about that, from an operation standpoint, how do you actually what a successful pilot looks like?
Yeah, so a successful pilot can look like a number of things, I would say. It really depends on the industry. Everyone's a little different, right? For example, there's also successful pilots and successful opportunities. We're also a BIRD Foundation, the bilateral foundation between the U.S. and Israel. It's a grant-making organization, gives up to $1.5 million in non-diluted grants. We've connected grants in that space, actually in the quantum space, which Colorado is also very big in. And for example, I would consider to be a success, because that's a connection between Israeli-American company for a research grant, and it's basically going to help move everything forward. And it's going to get commercialized. On another level, you have the pilot programs, which is bringing a tech solution, going to a partner, an institute, an organization, a client, whatever, and saying, hey, let's implement this solution. Let's try it out. Let's make it worth everyone's while here and see if there's value that's brought. So a successful one is when I can have the company say, great, we achieved our aims. We proved 1, 2, 3 based on our solution. The company that was working with them and was the pilot implementer, let's call it, they also feel value, and they say we got 1, 2, 3 out of it for us. And then we can move forward to use them either as a testimonial or anchor going forward in their U.S. expansion. So even for example, just now we had a company come to Colorado. They connected with a major water utility company there, and basically set up a pilot with them in kind of the cyberspace. Okay. Big deal. Moving that forward, that's an amazing thing to be able to have that move forward. And right now they're in the process, but something that would be positive out of that would be to say they have proven their model and they've proven their solution. And on the other side, the water utility has been able to get true understanding that, in a sense, their infrastructure is safe, that they've had, more, faster track of streamlining everything, whatever it might be.
So it sounds to me like there's a lot of value in this process because, founders companies can come to you, see if they're ready to the US or not, make like a sprint go over it. Once they get in, they don't know even what they're going to find. Like, there's so many opportunities, like a massive pilot that are going to lead to other sales and stuff like that, or maybe understanding of the market and then, collaboration of some sort. Sure. Is there any huge success story, real-time, big deal that you can share about?
In the state or from the chamber?
From the chamber.
So I'm not allowed to based on the chamber because we're on NDAs. What I can tell you is that in the let me tell you about something that I find actually to be very valuable from our end, because I want to give you kind of the idea of scope here, but I can't go into specific details on deals. In the 2.5 years that we've been working, which has been through wars and all this stuff in Israel, we've actually been able to manage 5 different delegations of Israeli companies to Colorado, which is incredible. We even had a 6th that was planned, but due to last minute cancellations actually on the Israeli side, it didn't end up happening. But we've done everything from water delegations to aerospace and space to medical to energy. So really, range the gamut. Now, I will tell you that these delegations can be valuable. They can also be a waste of time because, frankly, depending on how you set it up, it can be not a lot of value for the companies. But for us, it has actually brought in a lot of value. And one of them specifically within the aerospace and space field, brought several, over a dozen companies basically to Colorado from Israel. And in the process of the meetings that we set up for them, it was so successful that the people who met in Colorado, these companies actually came to Israel to continue deals with what I've heard so far, 3 out of the companies. Oh. And that to me is incredible. I mean, that's like basically a third of the companies who were on the delegation. Yeah. They got an opportunity to move forward with these guys. Something that would never have happened had they not come. Yeah, and that awesome. To me is like actual tangible value that happens and is at a level that I can actually talk about.
Right. So let's say, a few founders, a few CEOs, they listen to us and they're not in renewable energy or water technology.
Or aerospace or quantum.
Yeah. And they're like, okay, they're in Manhattan right now or right before trying Manhattan. What's the next move in terms of working with you or just exploring if this can be something that they can, work with or if this for them?
Sure. So, I mean, like all things, we're always open for calls and talks and to see if, really either our working together is a right fit or if, our network is a right fit or even if Colorado is a right fit. And I do want to say, Colorado is not necessarily a right fit for everyone. We don't have it all. Okay. For example, InsurTech.
Hartford, Connecticut.
Yes, go to Connecticut, go to Indiana. You're not going to find it here. You're not going to find it in Colorado. That's just not a thing. I would love it to be, but it's not. So I'm not going to create that market for you. And then guess what? I'm not going to also open those doors for you because I don't have it myself, and I don't have the value proposition to really give you, right? And there are other fields like that in Colorado that are just not huge, and it's okay. So I can also talk with you about that. And guess what? My benefit too, I would say actually as a chamber, and specifically the chamber that I am, is that I'm also able to field those types of inquiries to other chambers in the US that might be relevant for you. For example, maybe you should go to Indiana, because of insurance. Maybe you should go to California because of whatever. I can put you in touch with them. We're in touch. All the chambers are in touch with each other. We're working together. And so I think that's also something that's very useful here. But that's what you have to remember too, is that if you're either in New York and you're looking to expand, or you're just before that and you want to kind of check out other markets, just like there are opportunities in the other states, some states are also just not right for you. And that's okay too. But it's doing that initial discovery to also know that you don't waste your time and that you're also putting your time in the right state.
Right. So, what I'm hearing from you, if I want to summarize all of that, is that Colorado is not just a geographical solution. Yeah. Can be a solution for everything we talked about in this series. Yeah. Right. I mean, instead of trying to buy their way in, founders and CEOs with huge, budgets and throwing dollars at different billboards and stuff like that. An ecosystem that is focused like Colorado can just cut through the noise.
100%.
Right?
Listen, at the end of the day, America is not a monolith. It's not just America. As I said, there are 50 states. Colorado is one of those 50 states. And being able to get a real anchor in a state that's outside of, let's say, the big ponds of New York, San Francisco, Miami, can really make the difference in growth and also puts you in a different league as opposed to other people because, hey, you're growing in a different market that not everyone is doing it in.
So, and doing something like this, do you feel that it goes into the same category that we talked about for a lean, smart go-to-market strategy?
100%. First of all, I would say that talking with a chamber in any state is a good first step of discovery. Understanding if they're valuable to you, if they can really help you, what their network is, what is big in the state, how they can get into those industries or associations in the state. That's very important. And understanding that I think is key. And I think you have to really kind of be able to show where it is that you want to take yourself to. And so it's a great discovery tool. And I also think beyond that, it allows you to work with someone's already built up network, already their trust infrastructure, and essentially get them to be your partner on the ground.
Right.
Be your referral. Be the guy who says, hey, I believe in them. You should talk to them. And of course, I have my interests. Of course, there are people who are going to look at me and say, hey, no, I'm not going to talk to you just because you're Colorado Israel. Like, I'm not going to just talk to them because you told me to, Jordan. But at the end of the day, I also have that ability to actually do that. I had that ability for that one startup to get them to the Colorado Oil and Gas Association. They messed it up, but I got them to that. There's a major association. Like, they only took the meeting because of us.
Of course.
They wouldn't have just listened to any old Israeli startup coming to pitch them a solution.
Yeah. So essentially what we're saying here is stop drinking coffee in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Only and try to and get like different results and find the right ecosystem for you. Try to land there in a smart way, and that's kind of what we talked about in this episode.
100%. And the one thing I would do to just summarize even what you said is just remember, America is not a monolith. It is 50 countries. They all speak their own language in a sense. They all have their own ecosystems. And to really grow in America, you have to find that anchor point. And hey, in my mind, Colorado can be a great one for some people, but it might not be for others. And that's okay too. Find your anchor point.